Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are jumping right into a huge question, maybe one of the most complicated a country can ask itself. What does it actually mean to be American? We're going to explore this by listening to some really powerful voices and looking at it from a bunch of different angles.
So let's just put it right out there. What does that word American really stand for? This is the big question we're digging into, and spoiler alert, there's no simple answer. It's more like a giant, beautiful, messy mosaic of ideas, personal stories, and yeah, a lot of contradictions.
All right, let's dive into that idea of contradiction. It's really central to the whole American identity. And author Anna Quindlen has this amazing way of describing it using the metaphor of a patchwork quilt.
Quindlen points out this massive tension at the heart of America. On one hand, you've got the ideal, right? E pluribus unum, out of many, one. But then you look at the reality, and she calls it a kind of prideful apartheid, where all these different groups hold on to their identities so tightly they almost live separately. And that right there is the constant push and pull of this country. Unity versus division.
So this leads to what Quindlen calls a conundrum, and that's just a fancy word for a really confusing, tricky problem. Her whole point is that America itself is basically built on one of these, a fundamental clash of ideas that we're just always trying to figure out.
And this quote, it just nails it. This is the heart of the conundrum. It's about two ideas that are just baked into the American spirit, but they're constantly fighting each other. We champion the rugged individual, the person who pulls themselves up by their bootstraps, but we also crave community, this idea of being in it together. It's that constant tension between me and we that really defines the American character.
Okay, so if we're talking about America being a quilt, you got to ask, where do all those different patches come from? Well, that brings us straight to the role of immigration, which has been the source of those patches for centuries.
You know, the historian Oscar Handlin, who JFK loved to quote, said it perfectly. He started out thinking he'd write a history of immigrants in America. But then he had this big realization, you can't, because immigrants are American history. The two stories just can't be pulled apart.
And this isn't just a nice thought. It's backed up by hard data. A presidential commission back in the 50s looked into this, and the numbers they found were just staggering. I mean, look at this. In the 19th century, more than 60% of all actors were foreign-born. Almost half the musicians. It just goes to show how profoundly immigration has built not just our economy, but our culture itself.
And what's interesting is that this has made us rethink what unity even means. The old idea was the melting pot, right? The thought that everyone comes here and kind of boils down into one single, uniform American identity. But now, we're moving towards something new. An ideal where all these different cultures can exist side by side, adding their own flavor to the mix without having to disappear completely.
But, you know, this whole idea of a complex identity isn't just some big, abstract, historical thing. It's personal. It's something people live every single day. And that's where we hear all these unique voices, each telling their own story.
Some of these stories, like this one from Firuza Dumas's memoir, are just hilarious. Can you imagine having to give directions to your home country like that? Yeah, find Asia, then hang a left at the Soviet Union. It really captures the funny, and let's be honest, kind of frustrating side of trying to bridge those cultural gaps.
But then on the complete other end of the spectrum, you have voices that express this really deep sense of loss and loneliness. These lyrics, they're from a song a son sings for his mother. And that feeling of being like a leaf in the wind, man, that just perfectly captures the sadness and nostalgia that comes with leaving your home and feeling completely untethered.
And for many, there's this painful gap between the American dream and their everyday life. In a story called American History, we see this so clearly. You've got Elena's parents, who are working themselves to the bone, but dreaming in Spanish of retiring to an island paradise. Then you have Elena, who has her own American dream, college, becoming a teacher. But her reality, it's getting a door slammed in her face, being told she can't come in simply because of where she's from. It's a brutal reminder that you can be in America, but still be seen as an outsider.
That feeling of being an outsider, it brings up another really important piece of this puzzle. The rules. The unspoken and sometimes very spoken rules about who really gets to belong here.
And there's maybe no more haunting example of this than the poems that were carved into the walls at Angel Island. These were written by Chinese immigrants who were held there sometimes for years.
For them, America wasn't a land of opportunity. It was a prison. And their words, etched into the wood, are just these heartbreaking cries of people being denied the very idea of belonging.
And this clash over the rules can happen right inside a single family. In Amy Tan's story, Rules of the Game, it's like a mother and daughter are playing two completely different games. The mom operates by her rules, tradition, invisible strength, family honor. But her daughter, Waverly, she learns the American rules of chess, and with them, the American rules of individual success. And it sets up this incredible battle of wills between them.
Okay, so we've heard from the idealists, the historians, the storytellers. We've heard voices of joy, of sadness, and of anger. So what does this all tell us? How is an American identity actually created?
Well, it's pretty clear there's no simple formula. It's messy. It's always changing. It's created in that tension between our big ideals. It's shaped by every new person who arrives. It's forged in those personal fights with language and culture, in the battles between parents and kids over old ways and new ways. And yes, it's also built on the painful experiences of being shut out. It's all of it, all at once.
And maybe the best way to wrap our heads around all this comes from that Kennedy quote again. American society is a process, not a conclusion. That's the key takeaway. It's not some finished product. It's not a destination we finally arrive at. It is an ongoing, never-ending journey of becoming.
Which leaves us with one last thing to think about. If America really is this improbable idea, this crazy quilt that's a total wonder when it all holds together, what does it actually take to make it work? What does it demand from every single one of us to keep stitching those different, vibrant, and sometimes conflicting patches together?